There's a lot of ways to own a room, but there's really only one way to dominate it. And that's through telling a story with numbers. And by the end of this video, you're gonna understand exactly how to do creative accounting. When an agent looks at talent, what are they looking for? What are the characteristics? What are the attributes that sets the talent apart from the rest? And I think that's character, right? Aside from talent itself, it's character. Are they marketable, right? Are these, individuals overall good for business? Are these individuals willing to go the extra mile, right? What's their work ethic like? What's their upbringing like? Where do they come from? What are their backgrounds? Are they hungry? Do they see a desire, a passion? Is there something that's in them that can't be taught, that you can't learn? Is there something that's in them that gives you confidence that they can take it to the next level? Because there's always levels. There's levels to this. So, right. So where do we start? We start here at the base. But do you have the characteristics, the personality, and the right attributes, and the passion to stay disciplined, to be willing to take it to the next level? That's how businesses, that's how the careers are, right? A lot of these talent, like, do they understand the big picture? Do they have vision? And without vision, there's really there is no end goal. There is no objective. There is no North Star. We have to always have a North Star. A North Star is so important in so many ways. And you always see that when you have a successful individual. They have a passion, but they also have a vision, and they also have a work ethic that drives them to pursue that vision day in and day out. So it doesn't just stop with just sheer talent, because somebody that would outwork you with no talent can be successful, versus somebody that with talent and is lazy can accomplish. As an example, and this is somebody that I had firsthand experience with, Daddy Yankee. Daddy Yankee, some may question or may be arguable that he is talented. But what sets him apart is his work ethic versus everyone else in the genre, right? The responsibility, the structure in the organization, and his work ethic, his undeniable passion and pursuit to be the best, to be the GOAT. Then you look at artists like Bad Bunny, who also have that drive and that work ethic where it's amazing to see their pursuit for greatness, to be the best that ever did it. And I think that's what sets a lot apart. When I talk about Yankee, I worked with him for about 15 plus years, and no matter what, the guy's on work mode. Not to say that he's sacrificing everything else in his life and around him, but in some aspects he is. You kind of have to give up a lot to be the greatest. You look at Michael Jordan, you look at LeBron James, you look at Kobe Bryant. We know all these household names, but they all had one thing in common, and that was their pursuit, their drive, their pursuit, their passion, but more importantly, their work ethic. They were there first, they were in the gym first, and they were the last ones to leave. The Jeff Bezos, the Steve Jobs, the Warren Buffetts, they're the ones that are there first, and they're the last ones to leave. And then being an entrepreneur is the same thing. Like, you got to be the first one to show up. You got to lead by example. You got to be the one that is willing to take the risk, that has the courage, that somehow musters up that courage to be able to take that step and be the lead and take the lead on things, even when you have doubt, right? Like, you have to have that drive, and you got to be passionate, and you got to have that vision. And that takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of failures. There's no three advices. There's just one key advice: outwork the competition. It's as simple as that. Outwork. So I can take anybody from the street and I can identify 3 people at a bus stop. And I will be able to define which out of those three has a work ethic like no other. And that's who I'm choosing to work with me. That's who I'm getting behind. That's the one who I can tell you wholeheartedly that's going to be successful. It's the one with the work ethic. I don't care how talented you are. I don't care how smart you are, because at the end of the day, you know, in my career, I've been in boardrooms. I used to be really scared to go walk into boardrooms and, at these corporate, offices, because I always thought that these executives had something, I always held them in such high regard. And it's funny because over time, as I got to sit down with these executives that I thought that was CMOs and presidents and all these individuals, I quickly found out that they're just normal people. There's nothing special about them. There was nothing special about any of these individuals. And the only thing that truly got them to that position was their work ethic. They weren't smarter than me necessarily. They weren't more creative than me necessarily. It was literally their work ethic that put them in a position to make decisions, to be the decision makers. And I will always carry that for the rest of my life, because that's exactly what I would, if I were to give advice to someone, is, have the work ethic and be courageous enough to take the leap and bet on yourself. And I think that that's crucial, because if you don't believe in yourself, how can you expect someone else to believe in you? How can you expect others to believe in you? And so when I used to walk into those boardrooms, I say, you know what, oh my God, I'm meeting with the CMO. They have to be this, uber educated individual. They have all the experience in the world. They know everything. And I know just a little bit about what I do. And at the end of the day, I understood that I absolutely belonged, I absolutely had earned a seat at that table. Why? Because I knew my business, but at the end of the day, what I was willing to go through to get the job done is what separated me from everybody else at that table. And that was key. And once I understood that, and once I found that out, sky was the limit, and I was just off to the races, and I was just looking for ways to be able to interact and engage with individuals that were like-minded. I think Henry, as a person, he put a lot of fear for whatever reason into people. I was nervous, number one, because he was my boss. Number two, he was my father-in-law at the time. And number three, it's like he has this demeanor about him that where, he just was always quiet, and he's almost like stoic. He's always thinking. And out of a lot of people, and this is what made him dangerous, the fact that he was hella intelligent, super smart man. He had gone and gotten all the degrees that you can think of, and he got a degree and his master's in finance. But his work ethic was just bar none. And so his expectations of people that were around him were to operate at that same level, right? You expect as a leader for the people that you surround yourself with to, operate at that same level or above it. And so when I walk into that, my first meeting that I had, or the first, boardroom meeting that I walked into with him, it's crazy because all he did was he walked in and he literally, I'm expecting him to take over the meeting. I'm expecting to walk into a meeting and for him to sit down and begin presenting and begin doing his thing, showing me the ropes. Because at this time, I really had no experience, presenting strategy, presenting concepts, talking numbers, just overall just was inexperienced. His philosophy was always, let's just throw you in the water and see if you could swim. I had no playbook. I had no guidance leading into this meeting, but, we get into the meeting, the presidents are and the CMOs and all these big executives are sitting around us, and we're at the end of the table, and this long conference table full of people, and he sits down and we introduce everybody, and I'm just like, wow, super, excited to be here, but also nervous. I don't know what role I play at the time. So I'm just basically thinking I'm going to be a fly on the wall and hearing these, experienced top execs go through what is a presentation and a pitch. And And he turns to me when we're about to, after we introduce everybody, and we're like, all right, we're ready to get started. And so I'm just sitting there. I have my suit on, and this is like one of my first suits I've ever owned, ever. And I have my tie, you know what I mean? And we're sitting there, and he's sitting next to me. And mind you, they're talking at the end of the table. They're all, they're speaking there and they're introducing themselves. And not one point is this man acknowledging anybody at that side of at the side of the table, at that side of the room. He's just constantly looking at the TV screen and the board. And he's constantly just looking that way. He's just looking that way. And then they get to us and they said, all right, we're ready to begin the presentation. And so I'm like, all right, great. Like, let's see these guys go to work. And I was sitting there with the two other coworkers of mine. And they said, all right, Henry, you guys can take it away. And then he turns to me and he looks at me and he says, go ahead, get up there, present. And I said, and I'm now like, mind you, instantly my hand starts to sweat. My heart's pumping, I'm immediate diarrhea. And I'm like, I look at him like, well, what? Wait. And he just said, no, yeah. He goes, and he moved his chair out the way so I can get up. And yeah, I get up there and I begin the presentation. And that was my first experience and immersion into a corporate boardroom type of setting. And it was a pitch. It was a sales meeting, basically. We were pitching a concept. We were pitching a program for a few $1 million. And he put me, the rookie, not knowing how well I would do, but he took a risk and he rolled the dice. And one thing was important. He knew that no matter what the outcome, I would have learned. And so for me, it's just like he ripped the Band-Aid off. There's no other better time to learn than the present. And yeah, and aside from me being nervous because he's there and I want to make a good impression on everybody, he actually told me, go ahead, get your ass up there, present. And it was like a 50-page presentation. It was super long. And it had, the intro slides, then that led into the strategy slides, that led into the why, that then led into, the overall concepts or the opportunity, and then the concepts, and then the outro. And then obviously the money slides after that. And not until that we reached the money slides did he begin to speak. He was looking at his phone the entire time. He had his phone and all I kept doing, and he kept distracting me because now I'm presenting in front of all these individuals and I'm stuttering and I'm stopping, I'm forgetting my train of thought. And because I kept looking to the side and he had his phone out and he wouldn't, at that time was a BlackBerry, and he had his BlackBerry on, he wouldn't put it away. And he kept just typing on his BlackBerry. And then once I got to that slide, when we started talking about money, he's a money man, he's a numbers guy. And that's when he stepped up and basically cut me off because I was transitioning into the financials. And he cut me off and got up there and he started presenting numbers, and I just sat back and learned, and I just listened and just watched how he did his thing. And I said, wow, okay. But he got up there with so much confidence because he knew his shit. He had prepared and he understood and he believed in what he was pitching. See, the concept is great, but is it practical? One, and two, does it make business sense? And you have to be able to present your case to any brand as to whether it makes business sense or not. And that's where he knew that was the money slides. Literally the money slides. Like, talk to me about the money. I understand the concept is great. It's wow, amazing, great thinking, creative, awesome. But now talk to me about the numbers. And when you get into the numbers, it has to make business sense. And that's key. As I'm listening to him go through numbers, those numbers were actually telling a story. As he was presenting the numbers, they were actually telling a story of, we understand your needs, we understand how you do business, and we have the solution. And if you are creative enough to be able to tell stories through numbers, you have won half the battle. Because any smart businessman or woman are going to immediately want to know what the numbers look like. Talk to me about the financials. Talk to me about the numbers. And it's an art form. Henry had that craft. He had the ability to be able to tell stories. He didn't, you can come, and it's funny because you mentioned this, and I think this is key. And it's something that I've learned and applied that have helped me get so many brand deals. He had the ability to be able to identify immediately whether a deal was good or bad. And he was able to put together an entire story with numbers. And that's how he did business. You can come and sit down to him and present your business case. And he would look at it and he would literally flip page by page. And you're like, you didn't fucking look at that. Like, it took me a month to put this presentation together. And I finally sit down with you to present what I'm trying to, build and bring to life, or a concept or whatnot. And a creative strategy, right? That then had a execution strategy to it. But he would skip to the last page where the numbers were. And he would retrofit how that creative strategy would work into the financials. So he would go and look at the numbers and he would just break it down. This is, this is that. This is, okay, if we did this, we were able to do that. But why don't we do this instead of that? But he was actually looking at numbers. He wasn't looking at tactics. He wasn't looking at execution roles or anything like that. He was looking at numbers, and how he structured his numbers is how we ended up rolling out that business. It was insane. And I think that's why I've come to love numbers so much. It's a big aspect of closing partnership deals. If I know the numbers, if I put together a strategy, a partnership strategy, and I'm able to understand the numbers in such a clear way, that then empowers me to be able to sit down, and when a brand partner tells me no or declines a partnership deal, I'm quickly able to pivot and offer up alternate options so the deal doesn't just die with just the no. I'm giving myself an opportunity and an angle where I can approach this deal in another way, right? In another angle, with another angle. And so I've done the homework, I've done the numbers, I understand their objectives, I understand their needs, and I'm coming with solutions. But your solutions also have to have financials, and being able to creatively work numbers, and that's what we called it, creative accounting. Being able to creatively work numbers so that it positions you in the best possible way to close a deal is essential.